The stale scent of my mother's disapproval filled the cramped kitchen. You're just bitter about your sister. She's the capable one. You'll never measure up to her, Diane declared, her voice tight. I chuckled, shaking my head. Perfect, I replied coolly. Then she can start paying your rent. Just 60 minutes before I'd laughed again. Not from humor, but from the sheer absurdity of it all. My mother, Diane, had been sitting across the table, arms clamped tightly across her chest, her expression a mask of irritation, acting like I was the unreasonable one. You're simply resentful of Chloe, she'd insisted, her tone dripping with disdain. She's the one making something of herself. You'll never be on her level. I leaned back, a small smile playing on my lips. Good, I stated plainly, enjoying the flicker of confusion in her eyes. Then she can cover your expenses. The silence that stretched between us felt almost as good as seeing my sister Chloe tense up on the sofa nearby. Her perfectly polished fingernails tapped restlessly on her phone's screen, a poor attempt at pretending she wasn't eavesdropping. I saw the rigidity in her shoulders, though. Diane scoffed. You always think you're so clever, don't you? She snapped. Chloe is involved in significant work. She's occupied, unlike some people. I just shrugged, completely unfazed. This was an old song and dance. She'd been singing this tune since we were children. Chloe, the shining star, was always the accomplished one. Top of her class, graduate of a prestigious East Coast university, now rapidly ascending the ranks at some high-powered company, Apex Solutions. And me? I was the letdown, the family outlier. Whatever I accomplished, it was never sufficient. Diane never showed interest in my job, my financial security, or the fact that I'd built a stable life for myself. Only that I wasn't Chloe. So I decided to lean into her narrative. Well, seeing as she's the successful one, I drawled, stretching the words out as if uncovering a profound truth. Why don't you phone her right this minute and ask her to take over? Since I'm apparently so incompetent, I suppose you won't require my assistance anymore. I caught the brief flash of uncertainty on Diane's face, but her stubborn pride wouldn't allow her to retreat. All right, she huffed, grabbing her phone from the coffee table. She genuinely cares about this family, unlike you. Chloe glanced up, looking mildly irritated. Mom, what are you doing? I need a little help with the rent payment this month, sweetie, Diane cooed. Your brother has decided he's finished helping out. I observed the unfolding drama like it was a film I'd viewed 10 times already. Diane, utterly convinced Chloe would swoop in and solve everything, and Chloe, so self-satisfied, believing herself immune. But I knew exactly how this would play out, and I couldn't wait to witness their expressions when reality hit. Chloe sighed dramatically, tapping her nails on the armrest, as if she had far more pressing matters. Mom, I explained this already, she began, then quickly corrected herself. Her gaze flickered towards me for a split second before she pasted on that artificial, confident smile she used when trying to appear in command. I mean, naturally I'd adore helping, but you understand how things are. My expenditures are astronomical right now. She forced a laugh, shaking her head as if the mere thought of parting with her funds was ludicrous. I just put a hefty deposit down on that new loft apartment, and work's been absolutely crazy. I truly can't shoulder anything more at the moment. I watched Diane's face morph. First shock, then disbelief, followed by the familiar desperation she typically reserved for guilting me into opening my wallet. Chloe, she said, her voice suddenly softer, almost begging. Honey, I wouldn't ask if it weren't critical. The rent is due soon and… Mom, I interjected. And just like that, the prize child revealed her true nature. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Hold on a second, I thought. Wasn't Chloe supposed to be the successful one? I turned to her, feigning puzzlement. Shouldn't this be simple for you? What happened to all that major Apex Solutions money? Chloe shot me a venomous look, but I pressed on. Or is it possible, I continued, my tone light and conversational, that you're not quite as prosperous as you've led everyone to believe? Her jaw tightened. Diana was still trapped between astonishment and panic, tried again. You must have some savings. You've always been so careful with money. Mom, you don't get it, Chloe snapped, genuine frustration finally breaking through. Do you have any clue what my lifestyle costs? The loft, the vehicle lease, the credit card bills? Do you honestly think I just have spare cash lying around? There it was, the first crack in the flawless facade. I settled back, smiling inwardly. That was the thing about Chloe. She excelled at pretending, constantly showcasing the high life on social media, making it appear she was invulnerable, unstoppable. But I knew the truth. I knew she was buried in debt, stretching herself thin merely to maintain the illusion of success, and now she couldn't conceal it any longer. Diane looked genuinely flabbergasted. But you always claimed— I said what I needed to say, Chloe interrupted, irritation evident in her voice. She stood abruptly, grabbing her designer handbag. I don't have time for this drama. I have a conference call. She headed for the door, but I wasn't quite finished. So, just so we're clear, I called out, raising my voice slightly. You expect me, the failure, to continue footing the bills for everything while the accomplished one gets to just walk away without a worry? Chloe didn't even glance back. Get over yourself, Mark, she muttered before stepping outside and letting the door slam shut behind her. Silence descended. I turned back to Diane, who looked utterly adrift. It was the first time in my entire life I'd seen her speechless. I said, getting up and stretching leisurely. Looks like you backed the wrong sibling, Mom. Her head jerked up, her eyes flashing with renewed anger. This isn't amusing, Mark. But I just grinned because for the first time in decades, I was the one holding the cards. Diane sat there, clutching her phone as if she could somehow compel Chloe to call back, but she wouldn't. We both understood that. She didn't mean it, Diane mumbled, more to herself than to me. She's just stressed. She'll help once she settles down. I tilted my head. Sure, perhaps. Or perhaps she's been taking advantage of you. Just like you've been taking advantage of me. Her eyes locked onto mine, furious. Don't you dare— What? Speak the truth? I shrugged. You made it abundantly clear I wasn't the favorite, Mom. That was okay. But you also made it clear I wasn't good enough. And now the good one just abandoned you. She clenched her jaw, her breathing ragged. I could practically see the thoughts churning, the slow, dawning realization that, for once, she had no one to rescue her. I let that moment hang in the air. Then I smiled. Well, best of luck with that. And with that parting shot, I walked away, leaving her alone with the consequences of her choices. I hadn't taken 3 steps before Diane's voice cut through the room. Mark, wait! I turned around slowly, watching as she scrambled up, her desperation now painfully obvious. You can't just abandon me like this. I need your help. There it was, the reversal. The same woman who had spent my entire existence telling me I fell short was now pleading for me to stay. I thought Chloe was taking care of it, I said, crossing my arms. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. She will. She just needs a little time. I arched an eyebrow. And until then, silence. Her hands twisted together, a nervous habit I'd witnessed countless times when she was trying to manipulate me. You've always been the responsible one, Mark. You wouldn't just let me lose the apartment. I let out a quiet chuckle. You're correct. I am responsible. That's precisely why I planned carefully. That's why I ensured my own financial stability while you were too busy idolizing Chloe to even notice. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Wait, what do you mean, planned carefully? I tilted my head again, letting the implications settle. I could pinpoint the exact moment she grasped what I was saying. You have money? Her voice was barely a whisper. I didn't respond. I just let the silence hang there. And then the full-blown panic began to set in. Mark, please, you absolutely have to help me. Do I? I interrupted, pretending to mull it over. Because I distinctly recall you telling me I'd never be as successful as Chloe, that I'd never amount to anything significant. She visibly flinched. Well, I continued with a shrug, I suppose you were mistaken about that, weren't you? She reached out for me, but I took a step back. No, Mark, listen, I didn't mean those things. I was just frustrated. I shook my head firmly. No, Mom, you meant every single word. And for the very first time in my life, I watched her truly understand that I held the power now. Diane's breathing grew shallow, her fingers gripping the edge of the table as if it were her only anchor. I could see it clearly now, the fear lighting up her eyes, the stark realization that she had absolutely nowhere else to turn. Mark, please, she repeated, her voice softer now, bordering on trembling. You're my son. Family is supposed to help each other. I let out a slow, deliberate breath, shaking my head. Funny, I don't recall you saying that when I needed your support. She flinched as if struck. That was different, she insisted quickly. You were always challenging, headstrong. You never listened to what was truly best for you. I laughed, cutting her off sharply. You mean I never did exactly what you wanted? Her lips compressed into a thin, hard line. You don't understand, she tried again, shifting her approach. This apartment, my finances, everything is collapsing. I need your help. I tilted my head slightly. And where was this level of concern when I was struggling? Where was my safety net? She offered no response. For the first time ever, she held no leverage over me, and I could tell the realization terrified her. I should probably get going, I said finally, reaching for my jacket. No, wait, she surged forward, clutching my arm. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Just help me this one time. I gently detached her fingers from my sleeve. Mom, I said, my voice calm and steady, you made your decision a very long time ago. And with that, I turned and walked out the door. I didn't look back. I barely reached my car before my phone began vibrating insistently. I glanced at the screen. Diane. I let it go to voicemail. Seconds later, another call, followed by a text message. Diane. Mark, please just talk to me. Diane. I didn't mean any of it. You're my son. I love you. I scoffed silently. Love? Now that she needed something, she suddenly remembered the word. The messages continued to flood in, one after another, but I ignored them. I started the engine, my hands gripping the steering wheel as an unfamiliar sensation washed over me. Logically, I should have felt a pang of guilt. That's what she was counting on. That's how she'd always kept me tethered before, through guilt, through a sense of obligation. But I felt no guilt. I felt liberated. For the first time, I wasn't the overlooked child, desperately seeking crumbs of validation. I wasn't the fallback option for when the favored one stumbled. I was just Mark, and that was perfectly sufficient. As I pulled away from the curb, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Diane, it was Chloe. A smirk touched my lips. Let the next round begin. I let the phone ring 3 times before answering. Mark! Chloe's voice was sharp, abrupt, devoid of any feigned sweetness or smugness, just raw frustration. What did you say to Mom? I smiled to myself. Nothing she didn't already know deep down. Cut the games, she snapped. She's falling apart, claiming you walked out and left her high and dry. What exactly happened? I feigned astonishment. Wait, you mean she actually called you for help? I thought you didn't have any spare cash lying around. Silence followed by a sharp intake of breath. That's irrelevant right now, Mark. You know I can't handle this burden. Right. Juggling the loft, the vehicle lease, the maxed out credit cards must be incredibly stressful. Don't you dare act like you're somehow superior, she retorted. You think you're some kind of hero now just because you walked away? I chuckled softly. No, Chloe. I just think I'm finally done. You can't just be done with family. You were done with me plenty of times, I reminded her calmly. Remember all those years you let Mom criticize me while you just stood there, basking in the glow? Remember how you were the golden child while I was labeled the disappointment? That's not fair, she mumbled. Fair, I scoffed. What's fair is that you finally get a taste of what it feels like when there's no one around to bail you out. Her voice dropped, laced with bitterness. So that's your angle, revenge? No, I replied simply. It's just reality finally catching up. Another pause followed. She's going to lose the apartment, Mark, she said, her voice quieter now. I leaned back slightly in my driver's seat. Yeah, she probably is. And you don't care at all? I considered it for a moment. No, I stated honestly. I don't. Chloe exhaled sharply. I could almost picture her nails tapping impatiently against her phone. That nervous habit she displayed whenever things weren't going her way. You're truly going to allow this to happen? She murmured. Yep. I ended the call before she could respond further. Leaning back fully, I released a long, slow breath. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling. They were. And honestly, it felt pretty good. Over the next few days, I screened every call, ignored every text. Initially, Diane stuck to the guilt trips. Mark, I raised you. How could you treat me this way? Then she pivoted to bargaining attempts. I'll change. I promise. We can work through this. Finally came the predictable anger. You're selfish, unappreciative. You'll live to regret this. But I didn't regret anything. Not one bit. Chloe, predictably, went completely silent, undoubtedly trying to strategize a way to frame this situation so she wouldn't have to deal with Diane's problems either. Then on the 4th day, my doorbell chimed. I knew who it was before I even looked. Diane stood on my porch, looking more ragged than I'd ever witnessed. Her usually perfect posture had slumped. Her normally immaculate hair was disheveled. Dark shadows circled her eyes, her lips pressed together in a thin, desperate line. You weren't answering my calls, she stated flatly. I know, I replied, leaning casually against the doorframe. She paused, clearly torn between throwing a fit and begging. Her pride and desperation waged a visible war within her. Mark, please, I just don't know what else to do. There it was, the precise moment she grasped that, for the first time ever, She held zero control over the situation. That's not my concern anymore, I said plainly. You can't just abandon me like this. Her voice cracked slightly. I can, and I already have. Her expression contorted with frustration. What is it you want from me? An apology might be a start, I suggested coolly. Fine, I'm sorry, Mark, okay? I'm sorry for everything. I tilted my head slightly. For everything? Her jaw clenched tight. You know what I mean. No, actually, I don't. Because if you were genuinely sorry, you wouldn't only be saying it now because you need something from me. Her breath hitched audibly. For a fleeting second, I thought she might actually start crying. Mark, I'll lose the apartment. Then lose it. She flinched as if I'd physically struck her. Where am I supposed to go? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I shrugged nonchalantly. Maybe Chloe will let you stay with her. Oh wait, that's right, she won't. That seemed to be the final straw. She knew I was right. She had spent her entire life prioritizing Chloe over me, gambling everything on the wrong child. And now at her absolute lowest, she had nobody left to turn to. Please, she whispered one last time. I took a deep, steadying breath. Then with a small, almost satisfied smile, I uttered the words I had waited years to say. You made your choice, Mom. Now you get to deal with it. And with that final statement, I closed the door firmly in her face. I half expected her to pound on it, to shout, to demand I let her back in, but she didn't. Through the peephole, I watched her stand there for several long seconds, her shoulders visibly shaking, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. Then without uttering another word, she turned and slowly walked away. I didn't feel bad, not even a twinge. I had spent years contorting myself to please a woman who never once offered genuine affection. Years observing her idolize Chloe while I was treated as little more than an afterthought. And now, at long last, she was confronting the direct consequences of her own actions. And it simply wasn't my problem anymore. I assumed that was the conclusion, but I should have known better. The following morning, I awoke to a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost declined it, but a gut feeling urged me to answer. Mark, the voice on the line was strained, controlled and unnervingly calm. Chloe, this is the absolute last time I'm going to ask, she stated, bypassing any formalities. Help Mom settle her debts, resolve this disaster before it spirals further. I nearly laughed out loud. You still don't get it, do you? I replied. There's nothing left to resolve. It's already done. No, it's not, she snapped back immediately. She can still hold on to the apartment if we move quickly. I might be able to leverage some connections at the bank, but she needs funds, and since you're apparently doing so well financially, let me cut you off right there, I interrupted smoothly. She's your responsibility now, Chloe, not mine. Silence crackled on the line. Then for the first time, Chloe's voice fractured. I can't take care of her, Mark. And there it was. The golden child, the successful one, wasn't quite so flawless after all. She was floundering. She had maintained the persona of the confident, capable daughter for so long that she'd started believing her own act, convinced she was untouchable. But now the cumulative weight of everything was crushing her. Not my problem, I repeated evenly. You don't understand, she snapped. If she loses the apartment, she'll literally have nowhere to live. Then perhaps she should have focused on being a better mother, I retorted coldly. She did the best she could. I laughed out loud this time, a harsh sound. Her best, I echoed incredulously. Her best involved treating me like I was fundamentally worthless. Her best involved exploiting me financially for years, and then discarding me the instant Chloe achieved anything vaguely noteworthy. You don't grasp it, Chloe's voice rose in pitch. You were never meant to be the one who succeeded. It was always supposed to be me. I was the one with the bright future, the one designated to eventually take care of her. But I can't. The raw admission hung heavily in the air between us. She couldn't because she wasn't remotely as successful as she had led everyone, including herself, to believe. And now when it truly mattered, she had nothing substantial to offer. That sounds distinctly like a you problem, I said calmly, and disconnected the call. 2 weeks drifted by. The apartment inevitably went into foreclosure proceedings. Diane apparently tried everything. Tearful appeals to distant relatives, pleading with old acquaintances, even contacting my former childhood friends to see if anyone would take pity on her. But no one stepped up to rescue her, not even Chloe. I heard indirectly that Diane was forced to move into a cramped studio in a less desirable neighborhood. No comfortable apartment, no family admiration. She was effectively alone. And Chloe? She was reportedly barely keeping her head above water. The debt was suffocating her. Her trendy loft was supposedly on the verge of repossession, and her meticulously crafted perfect life had dissolved into smoke and mirrors. Meanwhile, I was doing well. Better than well, I was flourishing. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt utterly, completely free. It took some time for the phone calls to cease entirely. Initially, Diane tried maintaining appearances, pretending this was merely a temporary inconvenience. She spun tales about downsizing by choice, claiming maintaining the old place was simply too demanding. But the extended family knew the real story, and for once, nobody was buying her narrative. Chloe, she went completely dark. No more smug calls, no further attempts at guilt-tripping. She was far too preoccupied navigating her own collapsing world. And me? I was finally, truly liberated. I didn't just move forward, I excelled. I concentrated on myself, pursued my own ambitions, and lived the life I had carefully constructed, free from needing their approval or validation. I traveled, cultivated new friendships, and savored every dollar I earned without the constant worry of it being siphoned off by people who had never genuinely cared about me. And the most satisfying part? For the first time ever, I felt no compulsion to prove my worth to anyone. No more pointless rivalry with Chloe. No more begging for scraps of affection from a woman who consistently deemed me inadequate. I was finished with all of it. And as I sat comfortably in my own spacious apartment, enjoying a quiet drink in the peaceful silence, a profound realization struck me. I hadn't actually lost a family. I had escaped one. And in doing so, I had unequivocally won.